So can I count on you? One last time?
All right, kid. Let's go do it. One last time.
Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about Uncharted 4. I want to talk about my review of the game, since I've played it twice. And I've gotten all the collectibles. I just wanted to make sure I had all of the notes, all of the entries, to get a full picture, just in case there was anything like secret or hidden in there. I wanted to make sure I had everything. So I obviously, if you've seen my playthrough, I love this game. There is not much I don't like about this game. I love the themes of it. I love the themes of obsession and love and family and, that bond, what's stronger, and can you fight your obsessions and your addictions is more like it. When it comes to these things, what are you going to choose? How can you balance? And is there a balance? Now I feel, just jumping ahead, obviously you've played the game. So there's going to be spoilers in this review. I feel that Sam, not only was he an important character to have in this game, he basically saves Nate and Elena's marriage. If you think about it, they are totally unhappy. They are stuck in this rut of boring day to day. They're both working jobs they hate. And they're so bored and they're trying so hard to, live a normal life. For them, normal life isn't, normal for you or me. Their normal life is jetting off to India and Egypt and all over the world and looking for treasure. So, they, as Elena said, they oversteered. So they went too far off to the right, trying to make this marriage work and live a lawfully abiding life, I guess. So they're in a rut. They're trapped in the mundaneness of the everyday and who's going to do the dishes and here's my story that I'm working on that no one really cares about. I don't really care about. You don't want to hear about it either. And that's such a realistic. I feel it's such a realistic thing in relationships. Like that actually happens in relationships, and you get bored and things, you get in a rut. It's just a normal thing. And that normal conversation when Nate kind of drifts off and he doesn't, he's like, huh, what? Oh, okay. Yeah. You're talking about smoke and whatever and pollution and the planes. He has no idea what she's talking about because he's dreaming of being, having fun and being on an adventure. If they're not able to balance this. So this is the problem. In walks Sam. Sam comes in. He kind of gives Nate, look, I don't have a choice. You have to help me. I'm back from the dead. You have to help me on this. So in a way, Nate's glad because he kind of has an out. He can say, well, I did it because I had to save my brother's life. And I did it because, his life depended on it, and even, he really probably could have been pushed, even if he didn't come up with that whole cockamamie story, that whole fake story with, Alcazar. But it gave him the push that he needed, excuse that he needed, because he wanted to be out there and he missed that life. And so did Elena, but they didn't know how to rectify that with their relationship. So that was the problem. So Sam inadvertently saves their marriage. He comes in and Nate's forced to go on this adventure with him. Elena's no fool. She knows he's up to no good, and she tracks him down. Don't ask me how she tracks him down, but she is smart. She's an investigative reporter. She has tracked down, mercenaries and warlords, so she knows what she's doing. So she finds him, which we knew she would because she's too smart for that. And I don't know if he was trying to fool himself or, he knew she was gonna eventually find him. So it kind of brought it to the forefront, whether they had a choice or not. They both missed their lives together, doing these adventures together. That's what they did. That's what they did best. So it kind of forced them to one last adventure, illegal adventure. And it leads them to Sam stealing, some of the coins from the ship. And he gives some to Elena. which allows them, it gives them the money to buy the shipyard, buy the business, and take off on a real adventure without worrying about getting arrested or, shooting at people and killing people and getting killed. And that's when they're able to have a family and have Cassie. But I'll get into more of that later. But I feel like the main theme was family, love, obsession, addiction, and balance. So I thought the way they were able to tell that story, it made us care about Sam. We were invested in Sam, and he had to be in the story to make this marriage work. He forced them. And through Sam being so obsessed of this treasure, and since he's been locked away, he hasn't been able to go on the adventures that Nate has been going on. So he's still, searching for that life. And Nate's been there, done that, and he's trying to tell him, just like everyone else tries to tell him, Nate, you can't do this. He's trying to tell Sam, you can't do this. You can't tell an addict that they can't do something when they are dying for something and they're obsessing over something. So this was part of the issue. And I love the parallels between Avery and 2 and, Sam and Nate. Not, the penitent thief, we see Nate as the penitent thief, and Rafe as the jerk thief, they St. Dismas and the whole thing, and the whole theme of the religious theme, and how it went back to their childhood and, the St. Francis home. And I love how they tied all that together. And I'm so glad they didn't have a supernatural element in this game, because they didn't need it. They really didn't need it. That whole history of Avery and 2, and how it paralleled how this is where Sam and Nate are headed if they didn't, stop being so obsessed with this treasure. Rafe was so obsessed with Nate, trying to outdo him, trying to be the better adventurer, trying to be a legend. As much money as he had, he didn't have the street cred that Nate had. And this is what he was chasing, not so much the treasure, but he was chasing Nate's fame, his infamy, and he just didn't have it in him. Even when he broke Sam out of jail, because he needed him. He needed the Drake brothers because he knew he couldn't do it on his own. So for him to, for him to go to the auction, and everyone knew it was up for auction, and he was trying to draw them out because he knew that he could get to them, or if they got the cross, that he could follow them and just make a real easy, say he's been looking for 15 years, he got nowhere, so he needed them, and that killed him inside. So his obsession was not so much finding the treasure. His obsession was becoming a legend, having the cred that Nate had and his brother, and they just inherently had it. And he couldn't compete with that. As much money as he had, as much help as he had Nadine helping him. He had an army helping him, and he still couldn't do it. And he knew it, and that drove him insane. He was obsessed with becoming better than Nate and Sam. Like Avery and 2 were upset. Avery, mostly Avery was obsessed with finding the treasure. I like the duality of the story. There's Nate and Sam, and there is Rafe and Nadine, and then there is Avery and 2. There's just so many parallels. The good thieves and the bad thieves, Nate and, Sam, and Rafe and Nadine, the good and the bad. And, they got out with their lives and a few coins. That's basically it. That's how it usually goes with all that gold, all that treasure. It doesn't mean anything if you're dead and you have no one to share it with. So even though Nate and Elena decided to live the I guess the legal, the straight life, even though they're still adventuring, which is what they really want. So it's not so much like the shooting and the killing. They just want the adventure. And Sam and Sully are able to go and do it on their own because Sam still has that itch he still can't scratch yet. So he has time to catch up, and he's not going to let his younger brother outdo him. So Nate and Sam's obsession could have been a direct parallel to Avery and to their demise if they didn't learn to back away and just say, it's not worth it if we're dead. We can't spend this fortune, this treasure, if we're dead. Another parallel to the story is Evelyn and Cassandra and, Nate's mom. You can see that Evelyn, at the end of her life, she was suffering from cancer. She had no one. She had a husband who loved her. She had a child, and she was so obsessed with, finding treasure and finding these, finding the adventurer's life that she, so desperately wanted, that she gave up her family, her whole, her home was filled with things, but no love. There was no people there for her in her last moments. I mean, it was only by pure accident that, Nate and Sam were there when she died. But if they weren't there, she would have died alone, and she was alone for years. As you can see, that the son had wanted nothing to do with her. We don't want your money. We don't. So she had all the money. Her house was a living museum, and she had accumulated all these things, But then what? She had no one and nothing afterwards. And she's, I have, this is another dream I have to let go. And she still didn't want to let go of it. So it's so sad to see her demise that way, because she could have and that's what Nate, and I remember saying it when I was playing through it, like, Nate, this is going to be you. You and Elena's relationship is going to go the same way as Evelyn and her husband's, because there was no balance. It was all or nothing. And if you can't keep up with me, so that was so sad. But she was so important to the story, because she told us about Nate and Sam's mom and how smart she was and how, gifted she was. And I wish we knew, not that it makes a difference, but like, she committed suicide, and she felt, bad about that. She gave them her condolences. And she was so obsessed, it was like linked with some kind of mental disorder or emotional, where she felt like she couldn't get to the stories and the things that she wanted to. I don't think she resented her children, but depression is a real thing and anxiety is a real thing. And it could have been all tied up in that as well. The father was who gives their children up? I mean, if your wife is gone and died, and you just give your children up. So even Nate, Sam says during that whole chapter where they're in Evelyn's home, always the asshole, so he was always on the outs. Well, why pack up? We're just going to move in a month anyway. So he was not a grounding figure. So who knows why she killed herself? The point is that she died with all of this passion, and her sons wanted to fulfill. Now we know where the obsession stemmed from for Nate and for Sam, and why they were so obsessed with finding this treasure specifically, and just other treasures in general, because it was like an homage to their mom, who, died before she could see all, her dreams come true and her children see them grow up, and their life took a very bad turn. They had to escape the orphanage and escape their lives and change their names and turn their whole lives around. Okay, enough of the main themes. Okay, so I hope this doesn't run too long, but I knew there's just so much to talk about. So yeah, if Nate didn't learn to balance his passions, he would have wound up alone like Evelyn. What I liked about this game, first of all, let's start with the environments. All of the areas that we went to they were their own individual. You could tell by their the way they looked. They had their own personality, their own attributes. It was so beautiful and so detailed. It was so well done. I mean, even for Naughty Dog, like the level of detail was just beyond anything that we could have even imagined or hoped for. I mean, even for them, they went above and beyond everything. It was too much between the lighting, the art direction, the mountain, the iconic mountain where Avery, right under where Avery hid the treasure. I mean, the second I saw it, I first of all, I'm like, how does a mountain look menacing? How does it look evil? It looked like a gaping maw of, a shark or an animal, and it just looked badass. It just looked terrifying. And I remember when I first, saw it in the gameplay, I was like, wow, this just has a bad omen written all over it, which it did in the end. So that was like its own character in the game, and Italy was like its own character in the game, and Scotland and the landscape, everything was so perfect. It was so perfect. Like, I mean, poor Naughty Dog. If they ever did anything less than perfect, we'd probably pummel them to the ground. But they do everything so well that it's so hard to not expect so much of them, and they totally delivered. Okay, so what I liked about it, I like how the first thing that struck me is when we finally get back with Elena after we find out the truth about Sam, how he lied about Alcazar, is that he kind of subtly let us know within the conversation with Elena why we never spoke about Sam, why we never found out about Sam until now. I mean, when we saw Nate in Uncharted 3, when he meets Sully, he's alone. We know he doesn't have his parents with him. And then when Marlowe reveals that, Drake isn't his real name, which we kind of knew, and that he was at St. Francis home and he was alone, so we never assumed that. But since his records, I don't know how Sam wouldn't be in there, but she probably didn't go into every last detail anyway, and I wouldn't expect them to. But when he's telling Elena, when we weren't in jail together, we took turns going to jail. So when Nate met Sully, Sam was probably in jail at that time. That's why they weren't together. And that's why, they were off in different parts of the world. And then Nate and Sam met together, and then they were together until they were like 20 or whatever, 23, 24, 25, the two of them in jail. And that's when he thought he lost him. So since men aren't the best about talking about their feelings, and even Sully at the point when they're in Scotland and they're, he's waiting in the airplane and waiting for, Nate to check in. He's like, how's everything doing? And you could see him, he's got the walkie-talkie, and he's like, just bring me back something shiny. He wants to tell him that he loves him and please be careful. And you can see it in his eyes. You can see in the way his face is emoting, the feelings. So they are not ones to talk about their feelings, especially Sully. So it made sense why he wasn't mentioned before. And because I didn't want to bring him up again because he felt incredible guilt and shame that this was his fault. He had carried that guilt for years. So of course he didn't want to bring it up. So it made sense. They didn't make a big deal out of it, how he never told her or why he never told her. And it was kind of just leave it at that. And I love the backstory about when they were kids, from their small beginnings, the history with the mom, how she was so intelligent and passionate about, this adventurous life. And she was obsessed as Nate and Sam are, and that's probably where they get it from, especially the dad. That part really bothered me, that, he couldn't or wouldn't care for them after the mother died. And that really bugged me. Oh gosh. But even though we knew they were given up to the St. Francis home already, it just seems even more cold now that we know more about the mom. We love the mom now that we know a little bit about her and why she is the way she is and was. So I only am assuming that she was dealing with her own demons and mental issues and her obsessions with the suicide, the obsessive compulsive tendencies that she had passed down to her son. So this is a big part of who they are. Another thing that I loved about this game, which I'm sure you guys love the same things. I mean, it's so obvious. The character models were so well done. When I saw Elena in gameplay, when I first saw her, I couldn't believe how beautiful she looked. Like, we always thought she was beautiful, but the emotion in her eyes and like the lines in her face and her smile and her eyes were so expressive. And just the way she looked at Nate when she was mad and sad and whatever, it was just so well done. Even the bruising and the blood when they got hurt, it was just, they took like anatomy classes, and they everything from the coloring, the discoloration, and the muscles underneath the skin, they went deep to get this right. I also found the traversing to be so smooth in this game, which I always kind of felt it was smooth in the other games. I didn't think it was hard to traverse. But the first time when, you jump out the window as, young Nate, and you're traversing, and I'm like, wow, this is so smooth. It feels very easy, very natural. It doesn't feel like it's forced. You don't feel like, even though some things you felt like were way out of your reach, you were able to do it. You were able to make the jumps, I also like the rope swinging mechanic, and the piton. But one thing that I didn't like about it is not that I didn't like about it, but I felt like we could have done without it in the story. I'm glad we had it, but I didn't feel like it added much to the story and to the mechanics and the gameplay. It was cool to have, but even if they didn't have it, it would have been fine. That's all I'm saying. I do love anytime you can, there's nothing more satisfying when you swing it on that rope and then you drop down on an enemy and, take him out in one punch. That is awesome. I love that so much. So for that, I'm glad it's there. But even if it wasn't there, you didn't need it. It's not that it felt gimmicky to me. It didn't need to be there because there was so many other moving parts that were going on that made it so enjoyable to play. Another part that I loved is another staple in the Uncharted series is the puzzles. The puzzles in this game, I think, were my favorite in all of the franchise. They were so much fun to do. They weren't incredibly hard where you're like want to rage quit, or start looking up, how to solve it. And they weren't easy, but it was just challenging enough where it was fun. It wasn't sometimes, you're playing a game. It's not like you're like, oh God, it's so much fun to figure it out. And you feel like a sense of accomplishment. It's satisfying when you do it. I like the turning the ripped pieces of paper around when we found, when we were with Sully and we found the portraits of the pirates. That was one of my I don't know which one was. I keep saying each one was my favorite, but I love the theme of the astrology in it, which I thought was pretty cool. The weapons I thought were some really powerful weapons. It was the only problem that I had with the weapons is that I didn't know which gun was better than the other because there was like the copperhead and there was so many different types of guns specifically that I was like, I don't know, is this one better? I don't know, is this a shotgun? Like you could tell which one's a shotgun because they had less ammo that they were in the clips. But other than that, I didn't feel like I could pick a favorite weapon because every time I picked one, like the copperhead is one that sticks out to me that I really liked. And like the sniper weapon, I don't even remember the name of the sniper weapon. I forgot. But it seemed like they were different variations of the same type of weapon. Like I felt like they were like 3 or 4 types of copperheads in different degrees of, ammo and, strengths and weaknesses. But I love the weapons. I thought they were great. A little disappointed in the grenade launchers. Only I felt like they weren't as deadly as they were in the previous games. And I love the rocket launcher and the grenade launcher. So I didn't feel like they were as powerful, but they were still good. And like I said, the more I play it, the more I'll know which guns are better. But that was the only thing. There was so many good weapons. You didn't know which one. Usually you'll have like a favorite or like if you had a choice between one or two, you know which one to pick. I loved Rafe and Nadine in this. I love the duality theme throughout this whole game, and they were both a little unhinged. They were both had propensity to, had the propensity to be violent. And the fighting scenes with Nadine were so amazing. They were so well done. I love that she was totally ripped, and I love that she was so strong. She was strong in, she was intelligent, and she was strong, physically. She was just an amazing character, and I wanted more of her. So the only problem I have with that is I wanted a little bit more Nadine in there because the scenes she was in were unbelievable, and I loved when she came on screen. I loved her. I loved the fact that they put the dialogue choices into the game. You got to act a little bit like Nate and pick, what kind of smartass you wanted to be in certain instances, like the fight with Nadine, we're going to have to call a chiropractor. They're going to kick us out, and I love that. I love that we get to put our little choice and what we would like Nate to say in it. I think that's great. It doesn't, I like that it doesn't change the outcome of the story and it has no bearing on of what's going to happen. It's just a choice. And I love when they did that in The Last of Us, and I love it in Uncharted 4. The Easter eggs in this game, I loved. First of all, the Last of Us Easter eggs in this game in the epilogue chapter, which I'm going to get to next, were brilliant. The Firefly pendant with Druckley written on it, I was just, come on, that was just the best. When I saw that, I was like, Oh, I love it. I'm so glad. And I'm hoping that this, them putting that into this game is going to lead us to, hopefully, pray to God, Last of Us 2 sequel, hopefully with Joel and Ellie, because I feel like it wouldn't be the same story without Joel and Ellie. And if anyone's going to do it, well, it's going to be Naughty Dog. So even if it's not with them, which I hope it is, because the chemistry between them was so amazing. The father-daughter dynamic they had is just, you can't, I mean, it would be so hard to try and build that up again with another, two other protagonists. So I think it would be awesome if they did it again with Joel and Ellie. It's such an amazing game. Please, please, please let that be an Easter egg, and hinting to The Last of Us 2. Also, the Last of Us poster on Cassie's wall in her bedroom was a pregnant woman who looked like, I didn't think it was Ellie. I'm thinking maybe it was Ellie's mom. So it could have been like a prequel to who knows. Also, they had the Savage Starlight 2, which I didn't notice at first when I first played it. It said Savage Starlight 2, not 1. So it was, so it's so far in the future. Is it going to be like when we pick up with the last, this is in my mind. If we pick up with The Last of Us 2, is there going to be like the sequel to the first Savage Starlight that we'll see? I don't know. I hope so. I really hope so, because it looked like a different protagonist, two different protagonists on the cover on the poster. So I'm hoping. I love the relics in the game. We knew there was the strange relic, and then there was the strange fruit, and there's the strange pendant. So I like how they did 3, because they only had it 1 in the other 3 games. The Crash Bandicoot Easter egg, that one was spoiled for me. I was so pissed. But that was brilliant. Like, I'm playing a game within a game. It was so meta. And it was like the PlayStation. It was such a cool nod. Like it could have been so corny. It could have been bordering on pandering. But it was brilliant. It was so brilliant. And you got to play the game in the game. It was a mini game. Naughty Dog. It was just bravo. It was just amazing. I just loved it. I also love the closet of, memories in the office locked away, like their past locked away, like, and she found it, the daughter found it, and Cassie's like, you can tell she's ready to know, and she's going to follow in their footsteps, and it just sparked her, her interest even more, and it's just amazing how they did it, and I thought that was amazing. I also love how they named the dog. They named the dog Vicky after Sully, bringing back, if you buy the apple from the vendor, when you're in the market and, the lemur comes, when they're in Madagascar, and the lemur jumps off the dude's shoulder and he follows you and he steals the apple from you. And then they start, Nate starts talking about how I want a dog when we get out of this. And Sully says, well, when we're done, if we make it out of here alive, I'll buy you the dog. Can I name it Sully? Can I name it after you? So they named it Vicky, which I thought was adorable. I loved it. Last thing I'm going to talk about that I liked was the epilogue. If you watch my Let's Play of the epilogue, you can see I was completely blown away. I just couldn't even speak. I was so emotionally done when I saw that. I was so shocked. I was so happy when we got to see their daughter. Like, that epilogue was like everything you could have dreamed and wanted it to be. I mean, like, and things you wouldn't even like dare to dream that would be in there that happened. Like, they had their own child, they had a life together, they're still being themselves, they're still being adventurous, they're still having the life they want to live, but they're happy together. They're finally happy, And I had hoped that they would have their own child and they would carry on the tradition and the passion of adventuring that Nate and Elena had. So in our minds, anyway, well, we might never know, which I don't think they'll ever make a sequel with Nate again, which I believe them when they say that. But in your mind, in the fantasy, that she will take over and she will become, the Nate and Elena of the future, which I just was so blown away by it. hit all the emotions. It hit all the notes that you wanted it to hit. And it was balanced so well for what, you know, the players and the fans had hoped to see, but like they balanced it where it wasn't pandering to us. It wasn't like spoon feeding us everything that they thought we wanted to know. They balanced it so well, so it was everything we wanted and more. Like, how do they do that? I don't understand how they can know and pull these things off where it doesn't look like it's pandering to, you know, the masses, and it wasn't. It didn't come off as that at all. So I'm so happy that they did it so well, because it could have come off so corny. It could have come off so trite, and it wasn't. So I mean, it was just brilliant writing. That's all I have to say. My favorite part of the epilogue too, well, everything, but the photo album, we got to see what we missed in the last, 12 years from when they had, before they had Cassie, from when we last left them off, in the last chapter. And then when we meet Cassie, and see Sully holding her like at arm's length, like, like, don't throw up on me, don't pee on me, or, and then, with Sam, she's on Sam's shoulders, and they might not be the normal typical family, which I don't know what a normal typical family is anymore. I don't know, but they are their own family, and whatever the definition is, it's awesome. I love how Sully and Cassie have this, backgammon war going on, and they're competitive, and she just seems like the coolest kid, and it's just amazing. I mean, everything in her room was like a treasure trove, and that house was a treasure trove. And I geeked out over the whole experience, her reveal, the storyline, everything. I was speechless for like the first 5 minutes when we saw her. I couldn't even when we walked in the room, I'm like, what's happening? We're in a child's room. Are we in their child's room? Like, what's going on? Like, I couldn't even wait. Like, I just kept dying in the Crash Bandicoot game. I didn't want to play it because I'm like, I want to see where we are and what's happening. Okay, there's just one thing that I didn't love. I'm not going to say I didn't like or I hated, because I didn't hate it. But I felt like there wasn't a lot of combat in the game. Like I said, 99% love it. I didn't hate this, but it was just when I'm playing through it, I'm like, I kept waiting for that moment, that grand, not even so much. I know a lot of people saying they were waiting for like the big, like the train scene, or like, the building collapsing type of scene. Like, well, the building, there was a big scene in the game where the building collapsed and they're climbing up, and, it's like falling from the sky. So I thought there was a big scene like that, but there weren't as many huge gunfights as I thought there were going to be. There wasn't a lot of gunplay. There wasn't as much combat as I would have liked. The combat and gunplay in the other games was so prevalent. And I feel like there was a good balance in the previous games too, between the gunplay and the downtime, and where you're like looking for treasure and you're just, the cutscene. So I still feel the pacing was so well done, but I just felt like I never felt like there was like, oh God, how am I going to get through this level? Like, there were levels, even on normal, the first time you played 1, 2, and 3, like, oh my God, I can't get past this level. How many times do I have to play this, Or until you get like a good pathing going, or you found a good piece of cover and you let them come to you. And not here, which is kind of good too, because they can flank you. You're not safe in any area. You can't go behind cover. When you go behind cover, it erodes, it crumbles away. When it gets struck by gunfire, which is what would happen in real life. And I think that's brilliant, that part of it. But like I said, I would have liked a little more gunplay, a little more fighting when it came to, like I said, and there was plenty, but that's the only, it's very small. So I can't give it 100 plus. It's just 100 plus. So that was the only thing for me. And I also felt like the rope swing and the piton did not have to be in it. I liked using the rope swing, like to take down enemies. That I thought was awesome. But I felt like the game could have gone on perfectly fine without it. But like I said, if I had to give it a score, it would be, there's not even, it's like 10 out of 10. Like I said, it's a very small thing, and it's not even like a hate or anything like that. I'm not hating on it. I just felt like it could have used a little bit more combat. But other than that, it was brilliant. I loved it. Watch my playthrough of it. You can see my reactions to it. I think the whole first chapter that I play, I'm just like, I can't believe I'm playing this game. I can't believe I actually have this game in my hands. Like, I can't even believe I'm playing it. It was actually real. And the epilogue is where I get so emotional. If you want to see it, I'm a true fan. I'm a true fan of the franchise. I'm a true fan of Naughty Dog. So it really hit me hard when I got to the epilogue. I mean, I cried so many times playing this game. I cried, half the time playing this game when I was doing my Let's Play. So anyway, so if you haven't watched it, please watch it. I'm going to be doing a crushing walkthrough. I know there is... let's see, one of my friends on the channel, Phantom of Vanitas, told me that there is a glitch you can do where you can save it, save 2 games, play the whole game on easy until you get to like the last chapter, and stuff like that. But for people who actually, which is great, if you go for your platinum trophy, I'm letting you know that you can get it that way. It's an easy way to get it. You could just play it on easy up till the end, and then you just save the game, and then you put it back on crushing. It's an easy way to do it, and I think it's out there now. But he first told me, like, I think right after I finished playing it, I think. So thanks to him for giving me the information. Thank you. I'm just letting you know that was his idea. That was his thing. But also, if you want to do a crushing walkthrough, see if you can do it throughout the whole game, let me know. I'll probably do that when I come back from vacation at the end of June. But I also want to be putting some other more different gameplay in there. I'm going to be finished up some stuff. I have some new stuff coming up for the channel. So much coming up with E3. I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to be watching the PlayStation conference, everything. So I will keep you updated on what's happening at E3 and reacting to what's being said. There's so much I feel like that's been spoiled already, but whatever. It's going to be awesome. I can't even imagine what they haven't told us yet. So I'm hoping Naughty Dog comes out with telling us, teasing a little what the DLC is going to be. And I'm hoping by December, PlayStation Experience in December, they will announce The Last of Us 2. I'm hoping, please God. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like these videos. Please share these videos. Please subscribe. I try and upload every day. It's very rare that I miss a day. When I'm going to be away, I will not be uploading something every day. Trying to record so I have a lot of stuff for you guys. But anyway, thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting me in these videos. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.